speaker is Marc Aixalà. He is a psychotherapist, he is a holotropic breathwork practitioner. For a long time he has been coordinating the support service at ICPR, where he supports people that had challenging experiences with altered states of consciousness. So he's very much involved in this and experienced in this. He actually, I think, very recently he finished his book and he published this book about integration specifically for the people that didn't know. But I'm really looking forward to have Marc share his view on integration and to learn from him and how to optimize the integration process. So Marc, please come on the stage. Give him a warm and big applause. The stage is yours. Thank you.
Hello, good morning, everybody. Thanks for being here today. Yeah, let's get to it. Navigating the psychedelic integration landscape. So first of all, let's get this out of the way. I am happy to say that I still am free to share any thoughts that I have. So yeah, I'm gonna speak my truth. So when Jost invited me to present at the conference, I felt a little bit uncertain of what to share. Do I have anything to bring to the conversation? The psychedelic field has expanded so much and changed so much over the last years that it's difficult now to know where we are. I guess that maybe 10, 15 years ago, one could say that we had read all the papers were out there about psychedelics. Nowadays, it's difficult to keep up every week about what's going on, yeah? So the voices are becoming diluted, a lot of information is appearing every week, and it's difficult to know where we are in this psychedelic landscape. That also has to do about integration. We've seen a sprout of different integration practices, and sometimes it's easy to get lost in this world. So when thinking about what to share today, I thought about 3 ideas that I wanted to bring to the conversation. Yeah. So the first idea that I would like to share is have a little bit of an overview of the psychedelic integration landscape. Then I'm going to briefly share the model that I've developed over the last years in integration. And then I will share one idea about escalating psychedelic practices and how the future might look like. So let's get to it. So integration is a word that we've been using for a long time, but I guess that if we had to ask for a definition of what integration is, we would come with, I don't know, few dozen of different definitions of integration. Yeah? So it is difficult to really understand what integration is. Traditionally, there's been some activities that had to do with integration. Back in the early days of psychedelic research, there was already some activities that were used and labeled as integration. Integration is a word that was used already after psychedelic experiences. They were suggesting some activities, maybe a mandala drawing, maybe journaling, maybe writing about the experience. So there has always been the idea that some things need to be done after psychedelic journeys. Yeah? Back in the day, psychedelic integration looked like mandala drawing, journaling, artistic expression, and this is something that we still do. This is something that still happens mostly in a retreat context, sometimes in shamanic settings, not so much in clinical research, but this idea of putting out there, of expressing artistically what we have seen in our journeys has been understood as integration. There's also other activities like sharing circles. Yeah, in 1959, there was this British psychiatrist, Ronald Sandison, that said that in a community where some of the members take LSD, there is a tendency to get together and talk about the experience. Yeah? I guess that this is a quite good example of that kind of tendency of people that take psychedelics. Yeah? So in an organic way, we gather and we want to share, we want to talk about our experiences. So sharing circles is another of the integration tools and techniques that have been traditionally used. So people sit around, people share their experiences, people talk with each other in an attempt to somehow facilitate more insight through talking and sharing. Yeah? So early on, integration was relatively easy to conceptualize. Sharing circles, mandala drawing, journaling. All right, we can understand what that's about, yeah? Other activities have also been like one-on-one interviews. So sometimes after a psychedelic experience, you talk with a therapist. Yeah, you talk with your psychiatrist, with your psychedelic therapist in the clinical trial. We understand that this might be of use, but it becomes a little bit more confusing to understand what actually happens in this situation. What do these people talk about? What sort of things happen in this interaction? What do we mean by integration when this is going on? Yeah. Things become more complicated if we start thinking about different contexts of use. If we think about the shamanic or indigenous traditions, what do they understand for integration? So there's always been practices in Amazonian shamanism, for example, that happen after the experience. So after an ayahuasca experience or after a dieta with master plants, it's understood that you cannot do certain stuff. You cannot eat salt, drink alcohol, have sex. You have to refrain from certain behaviors. And that, although they don't use the word integration, could be understood as certain things that happen after the experience that have the attempt to kind of fix the benefit that you got from the experience. Yeah? But would this be integration from our Western framework? I don't know. And then what happens when we Westerners go to shamanic traditions and we come with our Western mind, our analytic and scientific mind, and get confronted with these animistic ways of seeing the world? How do we integrate, and what gets integrated into what? How do we integrate into their cosmology? How we integrate the experiences that we have there into our cosmology? What sort of new worldviews we need to develop in order to meet those different worlds? Yeah? And that can lead to some problems in integration because of paradigm conflicts. Yeah? So it's not only that we have to integrate a psychological experience, it also we need to integrate worldviews. Yeah? But things get even more complicated. Now we see a vast field of integration services that become even more confusing to understand what they are about. There's integration coaching, there's life coaching, there's integration practitioners, and it's all good, but it becomes more complex to understand what integration is. Yeah, there seems to be a huge offer in the market of integration, but a little definition of what happens there. And if it's useful, if it's not useful, if that meets what people need, or if it's just meeting the demands of the market, So I think it's an interesting debate to think, what is happening here? Why are we offering so much integration? Yeah? Is integration becoming a need? Are we making it a product that we need to consume? And then in clinical trials, integration might look different. I guess that in clinical trials, integration has more to do with safety. It is understood that after the experience, it's good to have a couple of sessions to make sure that the person is stable, that the person is safe. So the intention of integration is kind of bringing that psychedelic session to a right closure and bringing the person to safety. But again, is that the same integration that we see in shamanic traditions, the same integration that integration coaches or integration therapists are doing? I don't know. So, yeah, we can feel a little bit lost. And sometimes the trees don't allow us to see the forest. And in my early days as an engineer, what they teach you in engineering school is that if you have a big problem that you don't know how to solve, you break it down into smaller problems until you find one that you can solve, and you start with that. So that's what I try to do for a decade now, or a little bit over it. I was working for many years at ICPR, and we received a lot of requests of people that had difficult experiences, mostly with ayahuasca, but also with other psychedelic substances. And what we were doing there is to provide integration support, although back in the day we were not calling it integration yet. It was just supporting the community. People would contact us with a problem, and how can we support this person? Yeah. So I spent about 7 years working at this service. This is still a free service, so people can contact us and they receive free support in the form of answering their questions or having some Zoom calls or phone calls. Yeah? So we provide an integration process so people can feel that they get some help or they get directed into other forms of help that they might need. After 7 or 8 years working there, I decided to take a break and kind of summarizing the main ideas that I got in the integration field. And that came in the form of this book that Erwin was talking about, and in which I tried to bring all the knowledge that I accumulated through the years and also to present a method of integration that could be understood, explained, taught, and replicated, yeah, to kind of make it precise so people would understand and say, hey, when you're doing integration with Marc Aixalà or at ICPR, what is going on? All right, this is what's going on. Yeah, and you can read what happened session 1, session 2, session 3. So that was my idea of bringing the knowledge there, yeah. So let me briefly introduce you this model of psychedelic integration. This model of psychedelic integration is influenced by different things that I've done in my life. So as Erwin was saying, the work as a breathwork practitioner has been very important. Also my role as a therapist, also working in clinical trials and supervising and mentoring psychedelic therapists, but also working at Cosmicer, which is a psychological emergency service in a psytrance festival. Yeah? So this is recreational use of substances, but you can imagine that 40,000 people taking drugs for a week in an unsupervised way, some of them might end up having some challenges and they might need some support. Yeah? Not a lot of them, 1% of the attendance, but still that makes 400 people. So yeah, quite a lot of work. So one of the aspects of the model of psychedelic integration is describing integration through metaphors. It is not easy to give a definition of integration. I gave up this attempt. I decided to use metaphors to kind of illuminate different aspects of what integration might look like. Yeah? So instead of finding a definition that is reductive, to find a definition that would allow for amplification and a definition that would be flexible, so each practitioner could take what worked best for them. You can see the metaphors are really from different places, times, and conceptualizations of what integration is. The idea is that metaphors can give a lot of information with little explanation. Yeah? So you're confronted with a metaphor, and all of a sudden you get some understandings without anybody having to tell you anything else. Another important aspect of my definition of integration is what I call the dimensions of integration, to define integration in different domains. Sometimes we can think about integration only in cognitive ideas, like understanding the symbols, analyzing, interpreting, but there's much more. Yeah? We can talk about emotions, we can talk about what happens in our body, we can also talk about behaviors. Yeah? There's a lot of people that we have enlightening experiences, but then we behave in a rude way to the waiter, for example. You know? So is that integration? So maybe the behavior needs to be included in what we understand for integration. Of course, spirituality, and as Ross was talking before, the social dimension of integration. Yeah? Integration happens in community. At least it does happen in community in shamanic traditions, in which these practices are already integrated in what they do, and maybe that's why they don't talk about integration specifically. But as these experiences are somehow alien to our culture, or they were more, now are becoming more familiar, we still need to talk about what do we do with this to make it fit in our worldview. Yeah? And time. Sometimes in our Western culture, we're very rushed to try to integrate experiences, to understand, to finish with the process, to heal, to get rid of depression, to obtain certain decrease in the questionnaire of depression or whatever. Yeah? So yeah, integration happens through time as well. In my attempts to simplify what integration is, I described two main scenarios. When the experience has gone well, and what we're aiming for is to maximize the benefits, to maximize the positive outcomes of the experience, that's one scenario. And the other one is when the experience has been challenging. Yeah, and we perceive that we are feeling worse than what we were before the experience. So instead of feeling healing through the experience, we perceive certain harm. My work has been mostly focused on dealing with the adverse reactions. And in this work through the years, I somehow categorized different profiles, different challenges that people have, or at least what I saw that people were asking for or telling me in integration sessions. you can see that the challenges can come from very different places. Interestingly, some of them have to do with interactions with other people. So problems with facilitators that might have to do with abuse, neglect, malpractice, and this is something that happens. We do, as a community or as professionals, have an impact on what people experience. Other challenges might have to do with this cultural clash, as this attack of entities or possession states, people that go to drink ayahuasca and they are confronted with this reality of evil spirits or entities being in the astral space, and that becomes something really difficult to work with. So through the years, I've developed different protocols, different ways of supporting each of these specific profiles. The main philosophical approach to my integration model is constructivism. Constructivism understands that there is not one reality, but each of us, we build our realities. Therefore, it's not so much a matter of convincing or educating our client on what the experience that they had means. It's more the other way around. We, as therapists, as integration practitioners, to really understand the worldview, the cosmology of the participant or the client or the person that we're working with, and to work within that paradigm. Yeah. Another aspect of integration is structure. As I told you, my early days as an engineer, what they teach is to think in a squared way. I had to fight my way through that, but some of it remains. So I define integration in 3 phases. This is actually not my invention. This comes from certain modalities of strategic therapy. So 3 phases in integration. First of all, understanding the problem, setting some realistic goals, understanding what the person expects from this integration process, and building up a therapeutic alliance. And then phase 2 would be like the hardcore intervention, trying to unblock the challenges, trying to some sort of induce a different kind of experience so the person can feel that they are freeing themselves from the symptoms. And phase 3 would be to consolidate the improvements and managing the potential relapses or the potential problems that would arise throughout the process. So I've tried to create a model that, as I was telling you, can be understood, can be replicated, can be taught, can be analyzed, can be criticized. Yeah? I don't claim to have the absolute truth. I just share what I've been doing and what has worked and what has not worked for me. Yeah? So it is always an evolving method. It's always a working process. Yeah? And finally, some ideas for the expanding horizons. So I think there's some challenges that we're facing at this moment. Some of the challenges have to do with with diversity in the psychedelic field. We have a diversity in modalities, people practice in different ways, and it's always been like that. I mean, this is nothing wrong. In the early days of psychedelic research, we had psychedelic therapy, psycholytic therapy, hypnodelic therapy, so all sorts of different approaches. But if we talk about integration, maybe integration needs to be flexible to adapt to these different scenarios. Yeah? There is also a diversity in the actors involved in the psychedelic field. We have a very interesting moment now in which there's a mixture of people that have been in the field for, I don't know, 50 years, and people that have been in the field for a couple of weeks. Yeah? So that brings, and that's again a good thing, but that comes with some complexities. Yeah? And psychedelic substances, they do have this nature that they make us passionate about them. So when you have your first healing, your first opening, you want to share it with people. And then in a world where technology allows you to reach really wide audiences pretty fast, that can become a challenge. If you think about what would it take for a shaman in the Amazon to be known in the next village just 3 kilometers away, that could be some years, yeah? Some years of apprenticeship, some years of working and getting to, I don't know, get some practice, get your name known as a good healer. So pace was much slower back then. Now things go very, very fast. And that gives the thought of what should we do? How can we, those that have been here for a little bit longer, how can they teach us to do things in a better way? How can we learn of people that came before us? It's somehow trendy to talk about respect to the elders. I always wonder, who are our elders? Who are the elders of the Western psychedelic field? Yeah? And Yeah, there's also different people looking for integration. Of course, people that have had challenging experiences, and that is something that happens, that will continue to happen. And as people, and more people have psychedelic experiences, more and more people will run into some challenges, yeah? Luckily, this is a small number of people, but it has some important implications for their life when it happens. So we need to find ways to support these people. Also, clinical trials are becoming something bigger and bigger, and a lot of people are going through psychedelic experiences in clinical trials. It is also my experience that clinical trials can support people in a good way, but when it finishes, some people find themselves with a lack of support. And a lot of people look for other psychedelic experiences on the underground or in psilocybin retreats, so the reality is that some of the participants in clinical trials, they will look for ways to continue their journey with psychedelics. How do we support these people as well, yeah? Yeah, and there's a lot of people that have taken a lot of psychedelics and their symptoms and their suffering has not improved. So what do we do with them? Yeah, I've done 80 ayahuasca experiences, and this is not yet resolving my issues. How can we support the integration of those experiences so the psychedelic journeys will be really meaningful for them? So, where do we go from here? How can we scale? How can the psychedelic field grow and advance? I guess that the answer is very much at the beginning. I guess that psychedelics have been sending us a message since our very early experiences. These fractalic images that we see, that no matter if we look at them from really close or from really far away, they really look the same. If you zoom into a fractal, you find over and over the same things. And if you zoom out of a fractal, you also find the same things. So when thinking about how to scale psychedelic practices, how to scale psychedelic integration, I think that we need to apply the same logic, yeah? It's gonna look very similar what we do from far away than from really close. Why is that? Well, because I guess that psychedelic substances, they connect us with certain basic stuff. Yeah. In the end, no matter how big your clinical trial is, how large your ketamine clinic franchise has expanded to, and no matter how many retreats you're running a year, or how many clients you're administering psychedelic substances to, in the end, it will always look very, very similar. There will be two individuals, or maybe a small group of individuals, sharing a meaningful experience, opening up to fears, to vulnerability, to joy, to love. In the end, it will look like this, yeah? So I guess that psychedelics, they give us that message, that no matter what we do, no matter how far we go, it will always be important to take care of each other and support each other. So that's what I came to tell you today. Thank you.